Let's talk about mixing colors from scratch. I have my setup here. Here's some paper. This is a Fabriano paper. Not my favorite, but it will work fine for this exercise. I have my palette here with limited colors. I have a sponge to set my brushes on or to remove water if needed. I have my two waters, my darker water and my clean water. Various brushes, my round brush and my flat wash brush, which are the two that I use the most. I use these guys almost exclusively. And if you take good care of your brushes, they'll last you for decades. Here is my color palette that I have simplified, and I'm going to go through them. I do have a couple extra colors on here, but not required colors. I started out with about a 30 well palette years ago. I have simplified it down to what I consider basics. So starting with the yellows, and I'm giving names, but they're not necessarily exact names, but something in that area. For instance, here's the yellows. I have a cool yellow, a warm yellow, and an earth yellow. In my case, it tends to be lemon yellow, which is a light, cooler yellow, tends to be transparent. Cadmium yellow is a warmer yellow, and it tends to be opaque. Yellow ochre, an earth tone, is definitely opaque. On my red side here, I have a warm red, cadmium red, that tends to be opaque, and something in the alizarin crimson family, a cool red, which tends to be transparent. Here's one of my extra colors, just some sort of violet I have here. Two other earth tones, my burnt sienna, which is a brick color, and my burnt umber, which is a deep dark brown. Both of these are opaque. On my blue side of my palette, I have ultramarine blue, which is a cool blue and tends to be quite transparent. A cobalt blue or phthalocyanide blue. Those tend to be middle of the road and tend to be transparent. And my cerulean blue, which is my warm blue, heading toward the green end of the spectrum. And this one is opaque. I don't need all three, but I like having all three. Here is often a green, like a sap green. I don't need it. I had an old tube of it, and it's easy to mix a sap green, but sometimes it's nice to have really quickly. And in this corner, I have ivory black. I do not have Payne's gray because Payne's gray is basically ivory black with a little bit of ultramarine blue in it, and sometimes that blue will pop out of the Payne's gray and surprise you. And this is just some other little viridian green that somebody gave me. It's on my palette for now. Those are my basic colors. Now when we mix, the first consideration of mixing your watercolor is how much water there is to how much paint. Of course, the magic of watercolor is water and that transparent look that it has when it's on the paper. I've just put this down. It's very wet. I want you to take a look. See how it captures the light and the sheen? That is wet. And as we wait, or if we do it thinner, it becomes more matte. It becomes, so it has a sheen, and you find it between a spot where it's shiny, but you can see the texture of the paper, as opposed to wet where there's water standing on the surface. And then the next level is matte and dry. So we have basically 4 states: wet, sheen, matte, and dry. And I have another video that shows how to use those 4 steps. But this time we're going to mix with water. So here's water. If we have a puddle of water on our mixing area of our palette, let's start with our lemon yellow. If we want to test our lemon yellow, what if we take, I'm going to just dry my brush a little bit. I'm going to zoom in somewhat. We take a dip of the yellow, we mix it nicely. We have a little bit on the tip of our brush. Can't quite see it. And then we're going to mix it in with the water. And as we lay it down here, we see we have a nice light yellow. If we want that to be darker, we take out more water and we add more pigment. So that was maybe a 5-to-1 ratio water to paint. Now I'm going to make it a little thicker. See how thick that paint is? You can see it there. That's almost the opposite. That's about 5 paint pigment to about 1 water. So let's mix them together. So you have still the strong pigment over here and a lighter pigment over here with just the water. And now we can mix them and control them in the center. Lay that down. And you can see there's more pigment in this one. And we can proceed with every color doing that. And it's a great practice when you're learning to try the different paints. Let's start with some water. Let's go to a opaque red. So I have the water, I have the fairly thick paint, but it's consistent. Now I'll pull in some water. Well, let's do the thick paint here. Here's the thicker paint. And now as I pull in more water, that is going to lighten the pigment. We'll wait for those to dry and I'll take a picture of them. Always clean your brush in between. Now let's try a blue. I'm going to take the cerulean blue, which is our opaque. That's very thick. I'm going to just touch the water and add a little more. That's still quite thick. So we'll lay this down. We'll see how thick that is. Now let's add a good amount of water to it for a lighter tint of that blue. See how the water changes the look of the paint. I want to pick up that extra little blob of paint there, little blob of water actually. So I just dried my brush slightly on the sponge and I'm just going to use it to absorb some of the water. Because my brush is damp, it will pick up some of this like a sponge. So that's how we can control our hues, our pure colors. But what about mixing? A great way to learn to mix paint is to go around your palette. I would start with the lemon yellow, maybe down the side, and as you go across, go around the palette. So you can start with lemon yellow and we'll go around the palette adding the different colors to see what it looks like, and possibly different ratios. This, again, is a great exercise when you're starting out to learn what the different pigments will do with each other. Each pigment is different. It has different properties. Each manufacturer's pigment is different. If you have a Winsor Newton or a Daniel Green or a, is it Daniel Smith? Daniel Green? Sorry. If you have a Winsor Newton or a Sennelier lemon yellow or a Grumbacher lemon yellow, they can each not be exactly the same as the other lemon yellows. And you can experiment and ask your watercolor friends which ones they like and try them out. Be aware that each pigment is different, each brand is different, each paper is different, but the things you control are the ones that you choose and the amount of water and the paper that you choose. Watercolor is always a wonderful partnership between you and the paint and the paper. So let's start with lemon yellow. That's our starting pigment right here. And it's a great idea starting out that you label these along the edge with a pencil or something. Our next color is going to be this cadmium yellow. I'll bring a little here. Now I'm going to mix that about half-half with my lemon yellow. So here's some good strong lemon yellow here. Here's my cadmium yellow. Let's mix it about half-half. You're going to see that there's not much difference between the two. I wanted to put my cadmium yellow up top here too so that you're aware of what color I'm mixing in. All right. Clean the brush. Start again with a little lemon yellow. I want to make sure, because I'm mixing everything right now with this lemon yellow, that I have a good amount to choose from and pull out of. There we go, kind of push it out of the brush. I'm going to skip over to my reds, which are drying out very quickly. My cadmium red, which I have here already, right? Those particles are not dissolving, so I'm going to push those off to the side. Here's my cadmium red and a little bit of my lemon yellow. And I'll mix these together about half-half. Put that right there. What if I mix more lemon yellow with that cadmium? What color do I get then? See how it's slightly different? And that's important to know. I wanted to put my sample cadmium at the top here. Cadmium, cadmium. So here you would make a mark. This is 1-to-1 ratio, and this one is basically 2 lemon yellow to 1 cadmium red. So see how it changes, and you can practice this. Let's try it with our alizarin crimson hue. It's not a hue, it's just, I'm calling it that. It's something in that family. A little bit more. There's my alizarin crimson, alizarin crimson. I'm just going to try a couple. Going to get some lemon yellow. Lay it nearby. And let's try about half-half. And this is an approximation half-half. Take this into here. Very similar, isn't it? A little more lemon yellow. And this time, that's about half-half. I'm going to try a little more alizarin crimson in there. So it's like 2 alizarin crimson to 1 lemon yellow. And we can continue on with each color. Here's some lemon yellow. And let's pick up ultramarine blue here. I tend to keep my palette when I'm mixing my warms over in this area and my cools over in this area. It just kind of helps to organize and keep my palette cleaner so I don't have to clean it as often. All right, here's an alizarin crimson. Alizarin crimson. Now let's mix it maybe half-half. That's more than half-half. That's about 2 of the alizarin crimson to 1 of the lemon yellow. And I really have to clean my brush now to go back into the lemon yellow. And then mix this in. See? Now see this green? This is a great green. I'm going to put it down right here. This is my about half alizarin, no, maybe 2 parts lemon yellow to 1 part alizarin. Let me say this again. This is maybe 2 parts lemon yellow to 1 part ultramarine blue. And here's my green. Remember I told you how easy it was to mix that green? You saw me mix this right here. This is the green straight out of the tube. Look how close that is. So why buy a whole tube of this when it's so easy to mix it this way? It saves money and it saves room on your palette. I'm going to try the lemon yellow now with my cerulean blue. So this is a transparent lemon yellow to an opaque cerulean blue. That is a lot of paint in my brush right there. I can feel it. All right, I'm going to try to do 2 parts lemon to 1 part cerulean. Yeah, kind of like that. See how that's a different green than that one there? And now let's add a little more cerulean. So it's maybe half, and this is just approximation, but it's going to change that color. Oh, I got so much that time. Clean it off, grab a little more lemon yellow. Okay, there we go. So we can see that this is teaching us so much about mixing paint. There's my cerulean. And some people make these little squares, and I've handed out little squares, and you can do that right in the square. It's however you would like to do it. Let's try, now you would go down, you would go with your cadmium yellow and around, go all the way down, and then go all the way across and try the different ones. What if we were mixing, I'm going to jump down to mixing my ultramarine blue, which tends to get grainy, so sometimes I need to work it a little more. And when it gets grainy, you can actually go, when it gets really bad, and add a little more gum arabic or gum tragacanth to smooth the paint out again and regain its viscosity. That's its flowability. All right, so there's a ultramarine blue. Let's put a little dab of that here so we know what we're working with. A little more paint. Okay, this is my ultra blue. And now what if I mix it with, which tends to be a transparent color. Not getting a good wash on it here. Let's mix it with our opaque cadmium yellow. Put a little bit here into it. It might be about half-half. Look at how different this green is than these greens. These greens here with the ultramarine blue, this one, were with the lemon yellow, which was a transparent, and look how the color of that green is different from this color, which uses an opaque cadmium yellow with the blue. What if we tried it with the cerulean, which is an opaque color, with another opaque color of the cadmium yellow. I'm going to start that over here. Pick some of this up here. Now you can see my palette's beginning to get a little out of control. There's another green. What if we have some nice ultramarine blue here and mix it with our burnt sienna? Ultramarine blue, and burnt sienna. Some ultramarine blue. Let's try this again. That was rather a weak approach. This is a great way to get some beautiful grays. Let's try this burnt sienna with some cerulean blue. That is a lot of paint. Look how much of that cerulean blue comes up when I try to pick it up. Very strong. Off to the side. Mix it in. I don't want to contaminate, I need to clean. Ultramarine blue and a burnt sienna that was not mixed. That obviously has more burnt sienna than ultramarine blue. And you can start, almost by looking at them, you start to tell. These are two opaque mediums and really need to be mixed together to create a beautiful gray. Look at that gray. That's so nice. What if we, since we're in the cerulean right now, let's mix the cerulean blue with a couple reds. Let's mix some cerulean blue with a cadmium red. And that red just took over that blue. Did you watch that happen? I'm going to pick up a little more of this blue. And now the blue's taken over. There. Cerulean blue, cadmium red. Cerulean blue. And my alizarin crimson. How much have I got? That looks pretty good. Look at that, cerulean blue and alizarin crimson. Woohoo! Look at the difference from the cadmium red and the alizarin crimson color. Although I'm not sure that that cadmium red one is exactly the way it should be. Let's pick up a little more of this. I have a glob here in my cerulean and I need to clean that up in a moment. Okay. Still getting so much red in that. See how even somebody who's experienced, it just takes time and practice, and things change. The atmosphere changes, your air, your paint, your water, everything. You. Oh my gosh, we are constantly changing, and we have to be aware of that. So for grays, I'm just going off in another direction now. Here's an ultramarine blue with my burnt sienna. And what if I mixed in some of this green? Suddenly you're getting very interesting colors, earth tones. Great earth tones. There's an olive green. I have some cadmium red here. Let's mix this with, what have we not mixed it with? Cadmium red, we mixed it with yellow. We mixed it with the two blues. I want to mix it. Let's try with the cobalt blue. See how that works. How much have I got? That looks pretty good. Another very interesting earth tone. And I'll tell you, the earth tones are the things you really use the most, not your pure out of the tube colors. Another aspect of some of your opaque colors is how they will settle out. If I make a wash of my cerulean blue, which is an opaque paint, and here is a kind of a purple, and I mix these together and I do a nice wash of them, you often see more of the color settling out into some recesses in the paper. I'm going to take some cerulean blue and not much blue in that. Cerulean blue and burnt sienna. Now as we wait, you can see that some of the colors are more even on the paper, but some have a settling aspect to them. Here you can see some of the blue separating from the brown, and some others settle as well. See the blue settling here? I'll take a picture of this as well. Okay, this was mixing in my palette. What happens when we mix on the paper? Here's some lemon yellow. Oh, I want to back off so you can see. Here's some lemon yellow. I want that fairly damp. I'm going to put it on the paper, and I'm going to pick up some ultramarine blue. Put that on the paper. Then I can mix them right on the paper, and it will be a different effect than when you mix them ahead of time and lay them down. So you can either mix on the palette or you can mix right on your paper. And by doing each thing, you get a slightly different effect. Sometimes at the end, you're looking for a great earth tone. This is it. You just grab a bunch of colors, mix it around. That's pretty nice. Let's make it a little more red. Go over here, grab this red, bring it down in here. I kind of like what's happening here. Lay it down quickly. Here I have a yellow. What's going to happen when I mix it with this purple here? The yellow obviously was much stronger, more pigment of the yellow than the purple, but if we bring in some more of this red and a little of the green, which will neutralize it because it's the complement. Look at all the different colors you can get. And you can play with this all day long. Again, purple here. And some orangish kind of color into purple. They're complements. They're going to neutralize. You're going to end up with a nice earthy gray. You can methodically mix your colors or you can haphazardly do it. You're going to learn a lot more if you do it this direction first. Very organized, keep notes so you know what's going on. But as you notice, even with me, after decades of experience, sometimes the colors will surprise me. If you have any questions or comments, email me at travelingartista@gmail.com. And do consider joining my Patreon page for continued instruction and support.